All right, so thanks for joining us, everyone. It looks like it's going to be a pretty small, intimate group today. Um, my name is Dylan Connolly. My pronouns are he and they. I'm an education specialist at the National Center for Interactive Learning at the Space Science Institute, and I'm working on the SEAL project, the Solar Eclipse Activities for Libraries project, helping to get Eclipse resources to public librarians all over the country. I'm joined by Sky Reed Mills, who is our wonderful admin person at NCIL, who is handling all of the kit shipping, and glasses shipping, and is the go-to person for all questions regarding our community group and all the stuff we're going to be talking about today. So we've got some great resources to share with you, and we'll go ahead and get started. So here's today's agenda for the webinar. Today, if you've attended one of our Getting Started with Steel webinars before, this is a little different format. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We're glad to have you on board. What we're going to do is we're going to start out with a little bit of an icebreaker, and then talk briefly about the SEAL project, which is the Solar Eclipse Activities for Library project, talking a little bit about what SEAL's doing, what resources are available, and some opportunities for some professional development coming up. We're going to open up the floor for a discussion question on Eclipse programming plans. So if you're thinking about having any Eclipse programming plans, or you're still in the process, just start thinking about what you're going to be doing, and we'll have that discussion in a bit. Then I'm going to be doing an activity demo for a really cool Papercraft of the Parker Solar Probe that's available in the StarNet STEM Activity Clearinghouse in the SEAL collection. And then we're going to open it up for a Q&A. So as we're doing our discussions, it'd be really great if y'all feel like unmuting, getting on camera, and joining in the discussion, or you can throw that stuff in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. So let's go ahead and get started with our icebreaker. The SEAL project is all about connecting the public through public libraries with our solar eclipse. We have with solar eclipse science, solar science, and the just experience of watching a eclipse for the first time. So I thought it would be a really great place to start out. What is one of your first memories of being interested in space, the sun, or space travel? Because this is for a lot of, especially younger public library patrons, this is going to be like their first major solar or celestial event that they might be attending or witnessing for the first time. We had a total solar eclipse in the US in 2017 that was visible for most of the country. But if you're a 5-year-old, you missed that one. Or even if you were, 7 or 8, you might be too young to remember that eclipse. So this total solar eclipse coming up next year is going to be a huge event for a lot of younger learners, and it's going to be really impactful on the way they see the sky, space, and the world around them. So if y'all want to share in the chat or unmute, I'll go first. One of my first memories of being interested in space was my dad. I grew up in the military, and they had, my dad was in the military, and we grew up living on bases, and I remember being woken up late one weeknight because they were doing a showing at the Free Theater on base of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And I remember him waking me up on a school night and taking me to, I felt like it was the middle of the night, but I'm sure it was like a 9 o'clock showing, taking me to see Star Trek II. And I just remember being blown away by the special effects and the idea of like traveling through space, the idea of it being your job to travel through space. And that has really, seeing that movie for the first time really secured a love of space, Star Trek, and science fiction in me. So we've got some answers coming in the chat. Jessica said 6th grade because they had a crush on the science teacher. Totally relatable. I think all of us have been interested in something at one time or another because of a crush. Kira said, we studied space in the 3rd grade, and that's when I first fell in love with the night sky and wanted to be an astronomer. That's so amazing. It's crazy how those early experiences can really stick with you and make you just change the way you think about the world around you. And space is one of those things. I think there's that old adage about kids have 2 gateways into science, space and dinosaurs. And I work for the Space Science Institute, and I've got a big old dinosaur tattoo on my arm. So I was clearly bitten by both bugs. Sky, did you have an early memory of space or space travel that made you interested in the subject?
I definitely had a space travel phase. I'm almost certain it was kicked off by playing StarCraft when I was, I don't know, 8, I think probably was when I started going down the video game rabbit hole. Um, Sadly does not dovetail perfectly since it's mostly about lasers, but
And constructing additional pylons. But
and more planets.
StarCraft's a great one. I was addicted to StarCraft in middle school. There were many a late night when I was 13 that my family had to come and tell me to go to bed and stop playing Brood War. Um, Ariel said in the chat, preschool, which is very young and really fantastic. The entire month was learning about space, learning songs about space, and decorating the classroom that ended with the parents coming to see what we made and listen to our songs. I was the person who had a lot of the main parts in the song, so I went and still sung them even though I was sick. That's fantastic, Ariel. And I really think that's a really good example of how having a learner-centered experience can really change the way you think and inspire you to think about some really cool stuff. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing, everybody. If you're still typing and putting that stuff in the chat, feel free to continue. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next part of our webinar. As I said earlier, the SEAL project is all about StarNet, the StarNet library, connecting public librarians with information and resources to celebrate the 2023 and 2024 eclipses. So if you are on the western part of the country, you might be aware that we had an annular or ring of fire eclipse last month, just about a month ago yesterday. And that was the annular solar eclipse. And though the name might make you think that that's something that happens every year, it's actually used to describe the annulus, which is the ring around the sun that is, or around the moon that the ring around the sun that appears when the moon shadow passes in front of it, but is not large enough to cover the whole sun. So that was last month. But coming up in April, we have on April 8th, a total solar eclipse that's going to be viewable in most of the country. The path of totality is here on screen. You can see it's starting down in Mexico. And traveling up easterly, and it's going to be the path of totality is going to be traveling here from Texas through the Midwest and up through the Northeast. And so even though that's the path of totality, where the entire sun is going to be covered by the shadow of the moon, all across the country, there's going to be partial visibility of the total solar eclipse, even up where I am here, way up in the Pacific Northwest. I think we are getting 15% coverage, but so this total eclipse is going to be visible not in totality, but at least partial all over the country. And if you're one of these lucky ducks who lives along this path right here, you're going to get quite a show. It's going to be the last total solar eclipse that's viewable in the continental U.S. until I believe 2040. So quite a show that'll be coming up. And to get public libraries ready for that, StarNet and the Space Science Institute has put together the SEAL project, the Solar Eclipse Activities for Libraries project. And what we are going to be doing is we have an application available. Sky, if you wouldn't mind throwing that application link in the chat, or the link to the Getting Started with SEAL blog, whatever is your preference. We have an application for free Eclipse classes for libraries, up to 500 per application. We are running low on supplies. We've given out a lot for the annular, but the application is still open and we're fulfilling orders right now. These are completely free. All you have to do is fill out a short application and then include a letter from somebody in your administration acknowledging that they're aware of you participating in this project, and you'll get some free Eclipse classes. But even as we're running out of classes, that application also does things like sign you up for our newsletter and get you registered for the StarNet community group, which is a kind of social media style site. I'm affectionately calling it Facebook. And what it is it's a great resource for librarians to communicate with us here at StarNet, with each other, share programming ideas, as well as connect with Eclipse experts. We've got a whole contingent of volunteer space scientists and solar science experts who are doing virtual and in-person events and answering questions about solar science for librarians as they're preparing for Eclipse events. So really fantastic resource there. And as I said, it gets you registered for our newsletter to keep abreast with all things SEAL as we get ready to celebrate the eclipse in April and NASA's big year of heliophysics all through 2024. So we're doing in-person trainings in all 50 states and 4 territories. We have done quite a few states. I'm going to be going over which states are still coming up in the next slide, but check that out. And if you're on one of these upcoming states, you can contact your state library to get some more information about those upcoming workshops. We also have recorded training videos and virtual workshops, just like the one you're in now. We also have training videos on stuff in that Getting Started with SEAL blog post that Sky has so graciously put in the chat. We have recordings of some previous workshops we've done. We did a 4-part series in the spring, all about citizen science or community-based science and Eclipse programming. We've had webinars with Eclipse authors who've written books about eclipses for audiences all the way from preschool to adult readers, as well as many, many more that are a really great resource to check out. We also have circulating kits in state libraries with solar telescopes, books, and activities. We've gotten those into almost every state. I'll also be going over which states have those kits available, and so you can contact if you're interested in that. The kits include things like solar viewing equipment, like solar telescopes, binoculars, books, hands-on activities, really, really fantastic. And those are designed to be used before and after the eclipse. So they're available all year round from your state library. So if you're interested in those, contact your state library. And as I said, the access to the StarNet online community, which will allow you to have access to scientists, volunteers, Eclipse subject matter experts, and other librarians for that StarNet online community. So really recommend checking that out, registering for classes if you haven't already, or at the very least getting on board with our community site and the newsletter. So as I said, we're doing some workshops. We have some tentative dates for the remaining workshops. We've got North and South Carolina coming up tentatively in January, as well as Virginia. Nevada is going to be coming up in February, Illinois in March, and then Hawaii, even though Hawaii is not going to have a ton of visibility for the total eclipse in April, there is going to be an annular eclipse viewable in October in Hawaii and throughout the Pacific Islands. So we're having a workshop all about eclipse science in Hawaii in June. We also have TBA. We have DC coming up if you are in DC. And if, excuse me, any of you are joining us from the Pacific Islands, the American Samoa is also going to be having a workshop for that October eclipse as well. So as I mentioned, we have the Solar Science Circulating State Library Kit. Here are all of the kits as of 2 days ago. All of these states and territories have a Solar Science Circulating Kit available through the state library. The one exception is California. California is not doing state circulation, so if you're in California, I'm sorry, I think we're sending those out to 8 individual libraries. If you're interested in getting a hold of any of those libraries, seeing if they are going to be circulating that kit outside of their library, you can contact Sky, if you would mind, Sky, putting your email in the chat. Sky is our library and shipping liaison for all of those state library kits. So if you are in California and interested in getting a hold of one of those kits, contact Sky and they can put you in contact with one of the libraries that received them and see if you can work on an arrangement there. Other than California, however, all of these states, the State Library Association or State Library is handling the distribution of those kits and the circulation of those kits differently. So if you are, say, in Iowa or Kansas or Kentucky, contact your state library and they can walk you through how they're handling the circulation for those individual kits. All right, so that's our brief of the SEAL project. If you're interested in more information, including detailed breakdown of the kit content, some demonstrations of the activities from there, that Getting Started with SEAL blog post that Sky has been putting in the chat has links to the previous recorded versions of this webinar, which includes all of that information. So you can check those out if you want as well. So let's move on to our first discussion question. So I'm going to assume that if you're in this webinar right now, you are at the very least interested in STEM or STEAM programming, and most likely interested in doing something for the eclipse. So I thought I would kick off our discussion portion today by talking about what exactly are your eclipse plans. We were still, about 6 months, or I guess 5 months away now. So if you don't have any plans yet, that's totally fine. If you're just interested, what could help you get some eclipse plans firmed up? So I'll open up the floor right now, and while y'all are thinking about that, I'll talk about what I'm planning on doing in April, and if Blue Sky is as well, is we are all going to Texas. There is a really cool area that we're calling the Square of Awesome. That is the little square where the path of maximum annularity for the eclipse in October crosses over with the path of totality that's going to be happening in April. So all of the crew from StarNet is going to be down in Texas and checking out that total eclipse, which is very, very exciting. What about y'all? Where are you from? Are you going to be in the path of totality? Are you planning a big eclipse event? Or are you a little more off the path and you're maybe thinking about doing something more low key? Feel free to unmute or throw your answers in the chat. What are y'all doing for the eclipse? Ariel said they believe in the path of 27% totality. That's pretty good. That's going to be quite a show. Jessica said, no plans yet. They're a youth programmer from Pennsylvania and want to do something, but very new to the idea. Well, that's fantastic, Jessica. I'm glad you could join us. Hopefully we will be providing you with some good ideas. I can share, while you guys are thinking about your answers, I can share some of the stuff that we saw for the annular eclipse in October. Some folks that were more on the path planned to do a daytime star party where they had some passive activities from the StarNet STEM Activity Clearinghouse available on tables, and just had a space where things could be viewed. I had volunteers come from the community with cameras, telescopes with solar filters, and we're observing the eclipse. Some folks just prepared people in their community for the eclipse by doing some preparatory programming. So they were doing things like having virtual events with eclipse experts to talk about eclipse science, how eclipses work, how the path of the moon, the sun, and the earth line up to create the moon shadow that covers the sun. And so a ton of really cool ideas of different types of programming you can do. Some people did displays with take and make activities that people could take home to teach them about the eclipse. Got some more answers in the chat. So Donna said, I'm also a youth program librarian with no specific plans. I'd love to do some activities leading up to the event to raise awareness. Fantastic. I'm actually a little bit after this discussion going to be showing off a really cool activity that's a really great either passive table program or a take and make kit about the Parker Solar Probe. That might be something you can explore. Jessica said, even just fact sheets that I can give to families and use as a foundation. I have a lot to learn. Trying to decide if I can pull off something at the library, if I could be out of the community since kids will be in school. That is a good point, that the total eclipse is going to be taking place during a school day. So another thing that might be an option is partnering with a local school or a series of local schools and providing resources from StarNet to them and acting as an intermediary since kids will be in school that day. That's a really good point. And Donna, on that note, Jessica, you said you wanted some resources. That Getting Started with Steel blog post that Sky has been sharing into the chat. And if Sky, you want to throw that one more time, this has a link to all of our StarNet resources that we've developed for the Steel project. And it's got stuff like primers on solar science, links to the StarNet Activity Clearinghouse Steel collection, which has hands-on activities that are both available in both English and Spanish that have not only how step-by-step guides for the activities, but also background science about how these work. Things like creating a eclipse viewer out of any box, a pizza box solar oven to use for that. Sky also just put a link to the clearinghouse collection in the chat. Thank you so much, Sky. We also have some videos on there and links to things like timeanddate.com, where you can tell exactly how much coverage is going to be in your area by entering in your zip code. Writings about how to do some PDFs and white papers about how to do solar science programming and find partners in your area. There's a ton of resources there. We're also going to be doing several webinars in the months ahead leading up to the eclipse, all about how to do citizen science with your Eclipse programming. We're partnering with a great organization called SciStarter to do some of those. A ton of resources. Highly recommend if you're just getting started with thinking about the eclipse, check out that Getting Started with Steel blog post. All right, so now I will, so thanks for sharing some of your ideas. Let's move on and talk about the activity demo for the day, which is the Parker Solar Probe Papercraft. Now, this is an activity on the STEM Activity Clearinghouse. Which, if you're not familiar with the STEM Activity Clearinghouse, that's a resource startup put together of over 500 vetted STEM activities that are designed for libraries or adapted for libraries by us. And we have collections of different topics, including one on solar and eclipse science just for this project, but we have many on there. So I highly recommend checking that out. And this is one of those activities in the Spiel collection. What this is a model of the Parker Solar Probe. If you're not familiar with the Parker Solar Probe, it's the first spacecraft to travel through the low solar corona. So the solar corona is the cloud of gases and what they call ejecta, or particles around the sun that's normally invisible to us, but is visible during the total eclipse. If you ever see that beautiful kind of glow around the sun during pictures of a total eclipse, which will be visible if you're in totality in next April, the Parker Solar Probe actually is the first spacecraft to travel through that part of the sun. And even though this it is part of the sun, and particles and energy and gases that are trapped by the sun, it's still almost 4 million miles from the surface of the sun. So the Parker Solar Probe is designed was launched in 2018 and has slowly been getting closer and closer. And last year, I believe, was the first finally passed through the solar corona. And so it's collecting information on the how solar winds are created, which is really important. That's information that solar winds can interact and interfere with satellites, aircraft, space travel. So we're getting a better understanding through the Parker Solar Probe of how those solar winds are created, but also a deeper understanding of the solar magnetic field, the dynamics of how magnetism and energy create the different cycles of solar winds we see on the sun, and really just exciting, breaking, cutting-edge science about learning about the sun for the first time. So it's a really cool piece of science technology. And what this Papercraft is it is a cuttable and foldable papercraft that is a model of the Parker Solar Probe. So here you see on the left, this is what the final, this is a grayscale kind of version of what the Parker Solar Probe model looks like. And as you can see over here on the right, it's meant to model several different systems, the major basic components of the Parker Solar Probe. So we have the cooling system, which includes some solar panels that allow it to cool, as well as this very thick carbon composite heat shield, which you can see represented over here. The solar panels on either side that power the instrumentation column, which is right here, as well as this magnetometer, which measures magnetic fields, and the antenna that sends that information back here to Earth, where we can see it. And included, you can't see it on the diagram of the actual Parker Solar Probe, but this is really cool. This instrument right here is included in the paper model. This is called a Faraday cup. And what this is a tiny instrument that actually measures radioactive particles. It stands there and kind of acts like a fly trap or a bug trap, and it captures certain particles from the sun, measures them, and is really cool. And I just love the name of a Faraday cup. So this is so the model. All you need is to print it on some cardstock or heavy paper. You can print it on regular paper. but the creases and the parts will be a little more flimsy and they won't stick together as well. So if you are limited in resources, by all means print it on regular printer paper, but if you've got the resources, highly recommend printing this on cardstock or heavy paper. And I'll show you what the printout looks like in a minute, but it is meant to be design and decorate your own. So you can have program participants decorate their Parker Solar Probe before they cut it out, and decorate it however they want. And you can even have like a design contest or anything like that. Or you can show pictures of the, especially if you are having older learners like some tweens or teens, or family groups, you can have some pictures of the actual Parker Solar Probe and decorate it to look like the probe itself and actually draw some of those details on. You need some scissors or cutters. There are some portions of the Parker Solar Probe model that require you to cut out things internally. I'll show you what those mean when I show you off the actual Papercraft, but you might either need to provide some help cutting out some of those interiors, or have them, it's really great to have older and younger learners maybe pair this. It's a really great family activity for that reason. Have some older family members help some of those younger folks with some of those more detailed cutting things. And while you can put this together with tape or a glue stick, I've tested this several ways, and I find liquid glue is the best way to stick this all together. Some Elmer's multi-purpose or any sort of liquid paste like that would really work. Glue sticks are unfortunately just a little too weak to hold this together, and the model tends to fall apart, especially if you're using cardstock. We have another Papercraft of a spacecraft on the STEM Activity Clearinghouse for the JWST, or the James Webb Space Telescope. This is a really great Papercraft. While the JWST is not designed to study the sun, it is out at Lagrange Point 2, out a little further. While we sent the Parker Solar Probe to the sun, JWST is in the opposite direction, but both are really designed to be shielded from the sun's heat. The JWST, because it's an infrared telescope, has to be kept very, very cold. And so there's a lot of heat shielding on there, and it's actually positioned so all the instrumentation is completely blocked by the sun and it looks like it's on its side. So there might be some interesting things you can do with pairing both of these Papercraft activities, exploring how NASA builds to protect from the sun, both very close to the sun and very far away from the sun, depending on that instrumentation. So some really cool stuff to explore there. Let me go ahead and stop my screen share because I am going to show you this Papercraft now. So when you print out the Papercraft, this is everything you're going to have in there. It's I believe, a 14-page PDF, and it includes this Parker Solar Graph and then the pages of the model itself. When you print out the PDF, what you'll find is there's actually blank pages after each one of these. I believe that's to prevent if your printer is set to duplex printing or double-sided printing, it's to prevent these from being printed back to back on each other. Well, this more informational stuff is totally fine to print double-sided. In fact, these two pages come back to back and make a great table sign if you've got a laminator or a plastic table sign holder. These make a great table sign if you're going to be using this as a passive program. There's also this included in there. I'll be showing you this a little bit later, but this is a QR code that will take you to a website that lets you see a 3D model of the actual Parker Solar Probe that you can compare from any smartphone or iPad as you're building your paper model. So the paper model is divided into 4 different kind of pieces that represent the modules of the Parker Solar Probe. This is the kind of heat shield portion. This is the actual heat shield. This is the carbon composite heat shield portion. This is the cooling instrumentation. This right here represents the instrumentation. And this right here is will show up these are the wings, and this right here is the antenna and magnetometer portion. So all you got to do is, these are designed for, there's a simple code. All you got to do is cut out including some. There's a couple on here that kind of go, that are a little tricky, that are designed to go in a little bit so you can fold down these flaps. So make sure you don't miss those. And a few of these are designed to cut out inside, and I'll show you why in just a second. So you cut along the solid lines, fold along dotted lines, and apply glue to anything that is shaded. So you can have learners and visitors decorate these however they want, cut, fold, and glue them together. And then you assemble them once you have these 4 parts using these instructions right here. So you have that carbon composite heat shield, the cooling portion with the Faraday cup, the instrumentation column right here, and then the antenna and the magnetometer. And then these are the solar panels on either side, and you can glue them all together and you get your final model like this. So this is what it looks like when you cut them all out. And what you'll see is there's a few different portions on here where you're meant to cut out internally. And what that is designed to do is when you start to assemble this, what you'll see is all of these tabs work really best to glue them together when you can reach inside and apportion them. So these are designed to, as you're folding this, a really rough version, when you put this together, you can reach inside this hole to attach these tabs down here to this surface. That work, and then there's included covers, which once you've reached through that cut and hole, you can cover that with another portion, and then it remains solid for you to glue them all together. And what it looks like when it's assembled, this is one that I made yesterday. This is an assembled Parker probe. So you can see we've built each one of these individual portions. And what I was talking about with, I can actually pull this apart now. Here you can see this is that cutout portion I was talking to you about, and the cover is still attached here. But this allows you to, as you're assembling it, reach through and attach these. Down in here, you see those tabs right down here. Those are the tabs that you can glue the portions of each module to itself. So it is a little intricate. I would recommend this for maybe mixed generation groups, or maybe upper elementary is probably the minimum. If you do have some younger learners, make sure they're paired with either some library staff or volunteers or some older learners to put this all together. But this is a really cool Papercraft. It also makes a fantastic take and make kit. If you're doing some eclipse programming, talking about the sun, solar science, this makes a great take home kit for families to follow up, or a great facilitated program if you're having an eclipse expert or solar science expert come and join you. And what's really cool about this is, as I mentioned earlier, we have this QR, included in the PDF is this QR code. And what's really great about that is you can take any smartphone and use your camera to scan that QR code. As soon as you hold it over there, it's going to come up with a link. Just go ahead and click that link once the QR code is scanned. And here, this pulls up right on any phone a 3D explorable, zoomable model of the Parker Space Probe. So here you can see, here's the heat shield, the cooling instruments, the instrumentation, the solar panels, and then antenna I was talking about. You can even view it in your space, which my phone has not wanted to do lately. There we go. You can also use it to put that Parker Solar Probe in your space, so you can see it's now an AR or augmented reality on my desk. So there's a great way to have that reference using any smartphones. If you've got iPod touches or iPads at your library, using this as a reference for as they're assembling their Parker Solar Probe spacecraft. Really fantastic AR experience and a reference as they're building that model. All right, so that is the Parker Solar Probe Papercraft activity, one of many activities in the SEAL collection on the STEM Activity Clearinghouse. Now I will open it up and to a Q&A. So now's the time if y'all have any questions at all about anything that we've talked about today or seal related, go ahead and throw your questions. You can unmute or throw your questions in the chat. Jessica said, very cool and easy to find on the website. Appreciate all the details to making it in the QR code. Excellent. Glad that my demo was informative. That's one of my favorite activities we've got on there. I love a Papercraft, especially as like a take-home kit for a visitor. I know myself, I'm a adult colorer, and I love doing things where I can sit down. I love Legos for this reason. Any sort of kit or buildable thing I can do at home is always fun for me. So I also love attending live programs for that. Cool. So Jessica said they like to keep both on hand to have families have options. And there's a ton of, one of the things about the STEM Activity Clearinghouse that I really like is most of our entries on the STEM Activity Clearinghouse have advice or handouts on how to adapt these different activities for either facilitated in-person activities, virtual or hybrid programs, or take-home kits. So there's advice for a lot of these on how to adapt these for whatever kind of programming you want to do. If you are limited in staff and can't really do a ton of facilitated programming, we do have tons of advice on the STEM Activity Clearinghouse as well as the StarNet website about how to be a guide on the side, or to turn these activities into virtual or take-home kits. So that's tons of advice we try and give you. One of the cooler things we've seen libraries do as they're preparing for the eclipse is taking a few of our activities. We have things like if you receive our glasses either through us or some solar viewing glasses through another organization, we have a printable, foldable glasses storage case on there. So we've seen libraries do kind of a table display of different eclipse-related take-home kits. The glasses case, for example. We also have one called Pocket Solar System, where you use a long strip of paper and a sequence of folds to model distances in the solar system from the sun all the way out to the Kuiper Belt and Pluto. So that's a great take and make. This Papercraft is a great take and make. A ton of really, really cool stuff in that Seal Clearinghouse collection that works both as take and make kits or in-person activities. We also have great stuff that's great for virtual. If you're doing a virtual event, I know I live in Seattle. The Seattle Public Library does a ton of art-based virtual events. So we have stuff, if you're planning on getting in touch with any of the solar system ambassadors or Night Sky Network through JPL, or our own network of Eclipse experts through the StarNet community site. Virtual events are a great option for that. And we have activities like sorting games, how big, how far, how hot, which uses a series of photos of different objects and asks you to categorize them based on their size, their distance from Earth, or how hot they are. And we have different levels of that are for younger learners, for older learners, and make a great warm-up if you're doing a virtual event. All sorts of good stuff. And we cover, like I said, a lot of those, for example, sorting games activity is covered in the Getting Started with Seal webinar recording that is linked in the Getting Started with Seal blog post that Sky has been sharing. But like I said, this is the Q&A time. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute, throw them in the chat. It doesn't have to be about activities or programming. It can be about the Seal project in general. We're here to answer. Well, nothing's coming in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and throw my email and Sky's email in the chat. If you have any questions about anything we've covered today or any Seal-related questions at all, feel free to shoot me an email. It's dconnolly@spacescience.org. I'm more than happy to either answer you myself or forward you get your message in front of I so we can actually answer your question if I can't. Fantastic. Once you peruse the links you give us, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is in the chat as well as at the top of that Getting Started with Steel blog post. The Getting Started with Steel blog post is, we've been updating that as we've been doing the project. So definitely bookmark that if you're going to be planning on doing any sort of Eclipse programming. We are updating it constantly as we find new partners, discover new resources. If you have any questions about classes or shipping or registration for the community group, you can reach out to Sky. Their email is in the chat. It's s3bills@spacescience.org. If you have any questions about getting signed up for classes, the shipping of those classes, or the solar science kits, if you're having trouble getting a hold of your state library, Sky can help you out with that, or registering for that community group. So reach out anytime, and if there's no further questions or immediate questions, I will give you the last 15 minutes of the hour back to you. But like I said, reach out anytime if you have any questions to myself or Sky, and I hope to see you around the StarNet community group, and looking forward to finding out about some of the great Eclipse programming y'all are doing in the future. So thanks so much for joining us today. And I hope you'll have a great rest of your week and a fantastic holiday.